Oh, I guess, Shaun, we may as well start with the two injuries. Big Ooch, well, we saw his shoulder on Saturday, and then Adam McGurk as well.
Yeah, I mean, disastrous really, isn't it? It's, I thought when he fell on the shoulder on Saturday, I thought as soon as he hit the floor it was a serious one. But you have your fingers crossed until you see the specialist, and sadly for Ooch, his season's come to an end, and you know, it's been a huge talking point throughout the season. These centre forwards that keep on getting injured for us and not being available for the games it's been costly. But what we have found is an alternative to still compete, and we're going to have to follow the same guidelines once again.
With Adam, did he just pick up that injury in training?
Yeah, I mean, it was 20 minutes into the session on Monday morning, just on the back of a warm-up, and it was it was one of them situations where it's popped, but it's popped pretty severely. That it's not just going to be a couple of weeks, it's going to be, again, a season-ending injury that we're not going to see both players back until pre-season.
Yeah, and unfortunate timing clearly for both of them, but particularly for Adam, who I guess, having seen Ooch pick up his injury, would have been thinking, yeah, this is my chance.
Yeah, and he should have. You know, I think any person who witnessed Ooch's injury on Saturday, you know, forward attacking player, would have perhaps seen that opportunity to play against Crawley on Saturday. But for Adam, that chance has gone now. It's been a horrendous year for him, it really has. And listen, it's disappointing, not just for him personally. Always look at it from the player's angle first and foremost, because no player wants to be injured, do they? But for us as a football club as well, it's it's come at terrible timing for us.
So in terms of your forward options, that leaves you with, I guess, Ben Williamson, Jerry McDonough, and to a certain extent, Medialito as well?
Yeah, that's right, yeah. And, we go into the game with them three, and I think when you see Barry Core not being involved, Uche and now Adam, you know, these guys have got to come to the front, and, we've seen in little fits just what Medi can do in an attacking sense, but for the other two, you know, they need to basically, prove over the next 2, possible 5 games where their strengths are.
Typically this season you've liked one out-and-out forward with Luke Berry in support. Given the situation now, the likes of, well, both Ben and Jerry have actually been out of the squad in recent weeks. Do you think about going with the 2 up top just to lend them a bit of assistance? Because obviously playing as the lone role can be quite tough.
I think what we have to look at, guys, is the clear fact of the matter is that we've got a midfielder who plays his best football in a 3, and our most attack-minded, potent forward player is Luke Berry. So we have to get the most out of Luke Berry, and to enable Luke Berry to continue this vein of form that he's been on since I've been at the football club. His best position is a 3-man midfield. So to go and sacrifice that for the sake of playing 2 centre forwards is it's a talking point without a doubt, and it's something that I've been thinking about all week. But whether or not we're going to see that on Saturday, you'll have to wait and see for that, because I have to look at the bigger picture and see where our main goal threat's going to thrive.
With Jerry, is he all over his virus now? Is he fully good to go?
Well, yeah, I mean, Jerry's had that illness, which has knocked him back a couple of weeks. And he's obviously not made the squad, but the fact of the matter is he's not made the squad because Medi's been back in it, Adam McGurk and obviously Big Uche. So to go and have 4 or 5 attacking players on the bench, when you throw into the equation the Marises and the Dunks, certain people have to, they have to miss out. And Jerry's been decent enough to accept that situation.
Yeah, with George Maris, he seemed to pick up a bit of a knock at Grimsby. Is he not quite been 100%? No,
George has been in and around it. I think, if I take you back to our conversations earlier on in the season, he's a young player that's had a fantastic season, earned his contract, but at the same time, he's a young player that is his first season in men's professional football. And when you throw, again, the likes of Elito, Dunk and Mingoya, then we have got that kind of option of perhaps giving George a rest now and again.
You mentioned a few weeks ago about looking at the medical situation because there have been so many injuries. I guess one way of dividing it up, a bit like the injuries you've had this week, you look at Uche falling on his shoulder, not an awful lot you can do about that. I guess it's more the muscle injuries that you've been looking into, would that be fair?
Yeah, I think you're fair to raise that point. You know, that's something that we're in the process of doing, looking at the bigger picture. You know, that medically we have to be sure that the processes that we put in place are the right ones to take us forward. But at the same time, you know, it's all well and good looking at the facts and figures. But within all this, there's an individual element that comes to the front. And I think everybody asks, you know, I'm asking the question now of the players, that making sure that they do absolutely everything to put themselves in the best possible position to be the best they can be. And these conversations will continue because they have hampered our season.
Yeah, I suppose there are 3 stages to it really, aren't there? Can you do any more to stop the players getting the injuries in the first place? Can you do any more with the diagnoses and making sure you're right on it from the moment that they're injured, and then looking after them in the period as they work towards fitness again?
Oh, without a doubt. I think one thing that we have to make absolutely clear at this football club, that we're always striving to be the best we can be. And, you know, we've got people in different positions of the club where, you know, it means something to them. So for me as the manager, you know, obviously I want to see as many players available as I possibly can. But for the, you know, for the performance angle, you know, the physiotherapy department, they don't want to see players not being available for me and for the football club. So, like I've just said there, we'll be, you know, we'll be conducting, and as we have been for the last 6 months really, to see if this can stop.
Just going back to Portsmouth last weekend, what did you make of the midfield balance in the game, particularly early on? I'm sure you'll have looked at the goal you conceded, and there seemed to be an awful lot of space. People will talk about Liam O'Neill's role. What did you feel about what went right and what went wrong from a midfield perspective?
That's a good question. You know, for us, in terms of the balance of the midfield, that was something that we affected at half-time. We clearly thought that there was too much space in there. We felt our starting positions were too high. As soon as we become more connected and compacted as a midfield 3, you know, we managed to get a foothold on the game, and that proved a point in the final 45 minutes. I think that was one team who was definitely in the ascendancy, and that was Cambridge. And with the greatest respect, though, I think we have to understand that Portsmouth are one of the top 3 clubs of this division, and they were always the favourites to get promoted. And when you play with them players that they've got at their disposal, it doesn't matter how good you are on the day, when you're up against that opposition, sometimes you just lose because they've got the better players. Yeah,
ultimately Portsmouth away, probably not the sort of game that your season's ever going to hang on. For James Dunn, he came on, made a good impact. Is he pushing closer now to maybe getting himself a start?
Without a doubt, yeah. James came on and you know, he done what James does, but at the same time, like we've just mentioned about the George Maris effect, you know, we've got 5 or 6 different options in midfield, and I think if you was to be clinical with your diagnosis of what you've seen over this last 6 or 7 weeks, I think the blend in midfield's been very good. So I wouldn't advise you to get too carried away on a 45-minute performance which perhaps didn't categorise what we're all about.
In terms of the maths for the remainder of the season, nice and straightforward now. You just need the 2 wins, so you can almost put that to one side.
Well, we need 2 wins. Starts on Saturday against a team that's secured their stability in this division. That's not to say it's going to be a foregone conclusion, because we know it's not. You know, Dermot's going to arrive here with his own agenda, and what we've got to make sure is that by hook or by crook we get the 3 points. Anything less than that, then we know that the season's come to an end. But what I will say is that to take the second season that I've been in charge in, first full season, take it to the penultimate game of the season, to still be in and around a chance of getting into the top 7, considering, you know, where this football club ended in its first season back as a league club, I think everybody would have took that as a largely successful season.
Yeah, and of course having almost torpedoed yourself over the opening 8 games as well, for the players to have worked back, and there's a little wobble after the Leeds game as well, so the players have had to work through a few issues, so to be there is no bad thing, and it's good as well to have something to aim for, isn't it? You never want to be going into a game saying, "Oh, the season's done." You want to be playing every game so that there's something to play for.
Without a doubt, that's got to be the vibe going into the weekend. You know, I've said that all along. Whenever you have a disappointment like we have in recent weeks with certain results, there's always been a positive. You look at the league table and you see that we're 3 points off. I think any Cambridge United fan, any reporting journalist or anybody connected with the city, looking where we were in that first 8 games to look where we are now, I think everybody would say what a fantastic 6 to 7 months that we've had.
Yeah, and in terms of the target for this weekend, just take it to next weekend, isn't it? That's the plan.
That's the challenge, yeah. Make sure, you know, at the end of this 95 minutes on Saturday that we've done ourselves justice, hoping the crowd get right behind the boys and make sure that it's a formidable place to play. Because, like I've just said there, you know, this is the place where we want to be. We want to be fighting for the top 7, and we've done that for the majority of the season, so I'm really pleased.
Yeah, and plenty to draw on from your last home game as well. Exeter right up there with your best home performances of the season, so nice timing.
Absolutely, and we want to end the league format of the season with a win. You know, we know that this year there's been a lot of smiley faces coming back from away games. We want to make sure that the fans go home, back to their homes, you know, looking at a performance from the Cams class with excitement of taking the club forward. So that's the challenge this weekend.